Good evening and welcome to this week's 66 Think Tank, where today we're hosting it from a pub. Only some of us wish we were. I know I do. However, today's discussion topic will be fantasy taverns with party-forming plot hooks. How can we get the party from a tavern to the plot, or maybe the plot's inside the tavern? Who knows? So, I'm Josh, joined by Chris and Emily. We have several ideas. In fact, we have some ideas from our missing compatriots. Now remember, do subscribe for further weekly videos, and let's get on with the show.
Yeah, there we go, if I can unmute my microphone. So the check-ins. Josh, how has your week been?
Do not get me started, I'll try that again. It has been cold, it has been busy. I have had my hands cut to ribbons by the cold, shelving, and the dust is not helping getting inside there. So, conversely, I've not done any work on 66 Starbound because it's just been... It's Christmas soon. Just 13 more days to go, and that's keeping me sane.
Okay, on that note, how's your week been, Chris?
It's frustrating, though, not quite in sort of Josh's territory. I sort of continuing work on the sort of user-friendly tools for working with the wiki and things like that. And basically, at the beginning of the week, I sort of hit a problem, and I had to sort of like rewrite a whole chunk of code to do things in a different way so that I could do one bit I actually wanted to do. So pretty much this week's been spent redoing work I've already done, but in a different way, so I can now sort of build something else on top of it. So, you know, one step backwards, two steps forward sort of thing.
I know that feeling. My week, it's been very quiet. With Patrick having a new job, it's been very quiet in the house. And yeah, just been recovering from several different bugs and illnesses, so it's been very quiet on this end. And getting ready for Christmas too. And I think that's it with our small little group.
Yeah, I think that is. Yeah, we're thin on the ground. Jay is settling down in somewhere far eastern, and Pat's on his new job. So yeah, we are thin on the ground tonight. But they have sent in ideas for tonight's discussion topic, which is fantasy taverns with party-forming plot hooks. A slightly unwieldy title for that problem I know lots of us have faced as GMs, where you've got a group of players, you're starting a new campaign, they've generated their characters without any consideration to anyone else in the party or how they're going to sort of get started in their campaign. So you've got all these separate characters, and you need to bring them together somehow as a GM and give them the plot and get them started. Often you have to do this sort of on the fly when you suddenly sort of like the normal GMs hadn't turned up or whatever else, so you're just sort of scrabbling around for a game. So I thought, good idea, let's think of some plot hook ideas, ways to get parties started in a tavern, which may not be quite your traditional approaches. So that's the concept we're going for, how to bring those characters together and get the campaign started. And we're going to start with Josh, who has an idea which is entitled The Demons of Bastard Brew. Tell us more, Josh.
Demons of Bastard's Brew. The Bastard's Brew has always been a staple location in any of my fantasy settings. The Bastard's Brew is a rat hole of a pub in a dirt-covered back alley. You're as likely to get the wrong out contents of the barkeep's washcloth as actual ale. However, one day, the party notices a new regular, a seemingly human male who keeps his face hidden beneath a hood. He is seen talking to the lost and the damned patrons, and the next day they suddenly don't turn up. In fact, these are people who have been drinking and destroying their livers for the best part of, say, 20, 30 years, suddenly don't turn up one day. That's really quite near. And then they don't turn up the next night or night after that. In fact, completely gone missing, and town guards don't give a crap because that's one less drunkard on the streets. So it's now up to the party to discover exactly where they've gone, who this guy is, and what he's doing with them. The plot hook I've got is they discover that the hooded figure is an acolyte of a demonic cult underneath the city in the sewers. then they have to stop the said cult from unleashing the rat god, who will devour everything in its path. And I believe Emily has something to say on this.
Emily, I think it's distracted by a cat. Emily, you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, so the players, would they be kind of regulars?
Yeah, this is intended for very much dark / low fantasy. This is a case of these are the Kelly's heroes, the washouts, the absolute lowest kind of people you want. These people are not heroes per se. They are just people getting stuck in these stories.
Yeah, because there's something quite nice with that idea that they're really protecting their patch, really. Something's odd going around, and this is their little home from home. It's their pub.
I don't imagine it being a particularly good alignment, let's put it that way. Neutral or evil, at the very least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that aspect of it as well, because I was sort of, classically when you do this sort of thing, it is, you've just wandered into this tavern, you're all strangers, you're all outsiders. But if you actually do it sort of like it's a local pub somewhere, they've been regulars, and they don't know the other party members, but they know their faces, and so there's that familiarity and that sort of protective instinct you're sort of pulling on, you're sort of getting them to band together to protect their local patch. So, good idea.
I wouldn't so much call it banded together as they're being roped into it by each other. It's like, well, we've got to protect it. You got a sword, so you got a mace. Crap. Right, let's go find out. Let's go and hopefully not die and go and have another pint when this is all over.
Yeah, it might work well in sort of like a Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game, because that's very gritty and dirty and stuff like that. So that would be quite a good starting point. So yeah, that's a nice take on the idea. So Emily, you have some thoughts.
Yeah, mine was disaster. You would start off very typically, strangers go into a tavern. The local talk would be about strange earthquakes or strange kind of particular natural phenomenon, and then during the night, the biggest earthquake happens, and it actually swallows the whole tavern into kind of the Underdark, the Underworld, Dwarf Kingdom, whatever you're using in your fancy setting for your underground kind of lands, and the whole tavern is just almost destroyed. Everyone is dead apart from the strangers, the adventurers, and their mission would be to trying to make it back to the surface.
Yeah, I mean that's a good one. In sort of like you're literally just throwing the players in. They're sort of, it's completely unexpected. They might be thinking it's going to be maybe there's something going off in the tavern which starts the adventure or whatever. But yeah, just opening the ground under them and then sort of chucking them down into the dungeon right from that point. That's an interesting take on it. I like that. Josh, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm vaguely reminded of an old Sega game called Dungeons & Dragons Warriors of the Eternal Sun, where a whole castle was taken away and transported to a magical valley. The point behind it is everybody on the Underdark or Underground going to be an enemy, or is it up to the players to also start making allies to get themselves out of there?
Yeah, that's a good idea. It's seeing how they react to it. You should really place it anywhere as well. It could be like a magical item transports them to another plane. Just the idea of the tavern is displaced, and you guys have to team up because it's your only way to get home.
Yeah, the good thing about a disaster is that presumably the dungeon you've fallen into, they've not been expecting it either, and presumably the earthquake has demolished their homes and all the rest of it. So what you're doing is actually throwing a hugely chaotic situation. So yeah, you don't know who's going to be the allies, who's going to be the enemies, and you can forge those alliances, and you can, it's more of a sandbox situation than your sort of linear dungeon, because you've got all these elements running around. So yeah, it's a very good one, which doesn't require a lot of planning either. Josh, some thoughts on the tavern building, I think.
Is the tavern itself just a rubble-strewn mess on the floor, or is it just this tavern just sitting there in this cave? Everyone's just like, well, beer's still good. You can always go and have a drink first.
A bit like in Wizard of Oz with the the house being taken by the tornado.
Yeah, actually, you could do a good sort of riff on that, couldn't you? You know, actually, yeah, your pub gets picked up by a tornado, and you walk out afterwards, it lands, and you see a pair of ruby slippers on feet sticking out from underneath.
There's gnomes and hobbits everywhere.
It did occur to me, actually, it could be interesting if sort of like there were other survivors in the party. You know, people which the party felt obliged to try and get home. You know, because then that gives the party a more specific motivation, saying, "Oh, I've got to get these people back home." And it did occur to me, if you had something like, you know, you had a paladin or something like that in the party with a horse or a mount, and the mount lands down, and you've now got this horse down the dungeon. And they've got all the bombs. Well, how are you going to take it up the stairs? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think Neil's got an idea.
Yeah. Is there even as a possibility the idea that if like, because you could play it in different ways, but if say you wanted to have it sort of like it was a quest of characters who know each other, maybe they've done adventures before, and this is almost like, yeah, we've almost finished our quest, let's go to the pub. And then literally the night before they go and complete their quest, and then literally this happens, and basically story-wise you can have it that they now are in a delicate situation for whatever quest they just completed. They now potentially, it could be undone if they do certain things, potentially, because it may be that they're carrying an artifact, which means that that is now in a more perilous situation, or there's a time limit. They thought they were way ahead of time, but now they've got a time limit to get out as well, something like that. As a potential version of the story for an experienced team that's already worked together already, going to another story or something.
Yeah, I like the idea, especially the time one, because then that sort of, you know, puts an onus on it, and it's a real curveball for the party who's been on that long adventure. Yeah, you know, they're on that long haul back, they've got all that time in the world, and then suddenly this happens. Yeah, so yeah, that's a good one. Something you just sprung to mind as you were saying that is about experienced adventures. I thought, well, what happened if you did it as a reunion? So actually your player characters, they're all new player characters, but the actual characters have got 10, 20 years experience. They've all done the adventures, gone off, had the family, and they decided to get together for a drink, you know, to celebrate something.
This is World's End, basically.
Yes, yeah. Exactly, you know, it would just be a very different slant on the adventure, I think. Josh, some thoughts on gear?
If indeed we're going to the whole magical dimension, if that's possible, does their gear go with them, or do they then have to scrounge gear from other potential corpses there? Maybe this isn't the first time this has happened to a tavern. There's just they now have to scavenge. So this sword's a bit rusty, but it's going to have to do.
Oh yeah, I mean you could even signpost it. You know, you have this lonely tavern on a road, and it's called the Disappearing Tavern. And every 100 years or so, the ground opens up, swallows it. So when they land down in the bottom of the pit or in the other dimension, they're landing on a stack of other taverns, effectively.
Oh God, I'm just reminded of that scene from Monty Python where they're on about the castle being built in a swamp.
Yes.
They just don't learn about building this tavern. Yes, it's a major road. Yes, it's a great way to get money, but you're gonna lose your pub.
Yeah, well, you know, people build in California, you know, so no, great. Okay, I think that's a fantastic idea, Em. I mean, the amount of sort of ways we could spin that is clearly a great idea. That's what I'm going to keep. Okay, I've my own contribution to this was I wanted to sort of like play with the genre. I always like playing with the genre, and of course, how have we always traditionally started this situation? Is you have a barroom brawl. You know, the players are in a tavern, a fight breaks out, and they end up all fighting for the same side versus the locals or the goblins or whatever it is. And this is just a classic, you know, trope. So I thought, well, what happens if you have the situation where the characters come into this busy tavern, it's full of locals, and there's player characters there, but there's also other adventurers who don't know each other, NPC adventurers. And the barroom brawl kicks off but it's the NPCs who get involved, and the characters are watching this other party, this party of NPCs form and start their adventure. And there's sort of like, the players are sitting there saying, oh, very clever, sort of post-ironic, sort of, modernist take on adventuring. And then slowly they realise, actually, the tavern folks are just completely ignoring the player characters. Not only just ignoring them, the player characters appear to be invisible. And then they notice the back door open and a strange figure beckons the party over. And I just thought that would be a very nice way to sort of like, sort of take the piss out of the trope of a barroom brawl, but actually have a genuine and quite mysterious start to the adventure and a hook to lure them off into God knows what, could be anything, but clearly something powerfully magical. So that was my take on it. Now we had some ideas from Jay and Pat, who are not here. So we'll hand it over to Emily, who's going to talk us through Patrick's idea, which is something in the water.
Yes. Now this one starts with your group of adventurers get to the pub after, a nice long day adventuring, to find out the latest popular drink is sold out. But it was quite a lucky situation, because when it comes to full moon, anyone who's drunk this ale turns into a monster. Every following tavern they go to seems to be selling the brew under a new name, and no one seems to know who's making the stuff. And the whole plot is, can the adventurers discover the origins of the evil booze before the king shuts down every tavern in the land?
Oh, I like that. I like the peril there. What's the great disaster facing the kingdom? Is it the beasts? No, it's the fact that all the pubs might be shut down. Josh, some thoughts on this?
Yeah. Is it made of people? Is this the evil booze people? No, it's pretty much, exactly. It's pretty much what Chris was going to say. It's like that is their highest priority. Screw all the monsters. We've got to save the booze. There's got to be somewhere for us to go after an adventure.
Yeah, I mean, you could sort of play it 2 levels. You could actually have the monsters actually serious monsters, and the party has to get out and fight them and kill them, and basically the plot is just an excuse for a series of fights. Or actually, you could sort of make it more humorous by actually having the transformations completely unimportant, or you don't turn into a werewolf, you turn into something, a pixie or a pig or something like that, something which isn't dangerous but is clearly a public hazard.
I really like it. Again, it's the priorities of what's more important to your party. It's like not saving the kingdom, it's having your pub at the end of the day.
Josh?
Just for, if it's going to be you turn into something, what happens if you turn into a fire elemental? That's one hell of a drink. Spontaneous human combustion.
Oh, yes.
What happened? Also, I just thought, what happens if this beer gets served at a banquet for royalty? Suddenly, the royalties are suddenly turning into these monsters. And there's a great way to, what a better way to assassinate a king than having his own soldiers kill him?
Yeah, I mean, though I quite like the idea of it's just spontaneous combustion. The victim is just and burn nothing. Because especially if it's not immediately obvious what the cause is, that so that maybe there's been a spate of spontaneous combustion and no one's quite sure, and then the party witness someone doing it just after they've taken a drink. So maybe that will sort of start the adventure, start them thinking. Emily?
So you could always have it that the adventurers have had a drink of this and then have discovered what it is. So they've got that countdown if they've got a month to try and find a cure to this booze before they transform into a monster.
Yes. Ooh, yeah, if you if they've already sort of... Yeah, if you have things like you've got to take the drink, but there's some sort of trigger, or something else external, that triggers the spontaneous combustion, and the party then have to avoid it, and you could sort of make it something silly like they can't eat garlic. Once you've drunk this beer and you have garlic, you spontaneously combust, or something inconvenient like being near a horse. Or can't eat iron rations. So you could do that, and you're right about having the cure. It really sort of give the players a motivation, a very personal motivation. Josh,
just for a small subversion, what if it's not genuinely an evildoer doing this? What if it's just the magistrates thinking, well, the pubs are creating too much of a problem for us now. There are too many drunks, too many drunken adventurers. So let's just find some silly way that's inevitably going to go out of control to get rid of them all. Something mundane like that.
Yes, the magistrates are either cutting down on adventurers or just trying to put people off drinking. Maybe there's a teetotal society as bow adventurers. Yes, it seems like the teetotal society. They're trying to get people to stop drinking, and they've deliberately launched this sort of poisonous beer as sort of some sort of misguided campaign. It did occur to me that maybe the cause could be the hops or something the beer's made with might be growing in a field where there's some sort of artifact or some sort of magical effect going off. So you actually, where this beer is coming from and whether it's deliberate or not, actually can make quite an interesting adventure in its own right. Okay, so that's enough deadly beer. So, Josh, would you like to take us through Jay's idea?
I would, but I don't have any cheesecake. So, apparently the players owe a debt of service. Story goes, the PCs are a group of strangers, each going about their separate businesses in the tavern, when a group of local thugs barge in. The thugs, numerous in number but low in skill, spread out about the bar and seem to make a point of picking a fight with each of the PCs, and only the PCs. The NPCs are just scarpered, gone. And once the fight is over, a local lord walks in and says, look, you've trounced my tavern, you've trounced my men, you see all this damage you've done, right, it's either going to cost you, or you do loads of these little tasks for me. It's like, was it 7 labours of Hercules via the world's end?
Yeah, it's a sort of it's a trap for adventurers, getting adventurers to come and do proper work rather than sort of adventuring. Yeah, sort of situation where adventurers are going to do what adventurers do, cause trouble, get into a fight, and you set it up so that you can then take advantage of them and blackmail them. So yeah, that's a nice hook, Josh.
It's like it depends how varied these tasks are. I mean, you could do something as simple as go and bring me several tons of wood, or go and slay Karahandras the Dragon Eater. Go on, go kill him. He's been a pain in the arse for several years now, and we can't have him eating our cows anymore. Go kill him. It's like, how far do they range in between the difficulty of tasks? Maybe that's the point of the whole campaign. Maybe every separate adventure is just one of the tasks. Maybe you only have 6, and they just get bigger and more difficult the longer they go on.
Yes, and of course you can also maybe the tasks aren't difficult. You can have some non-combat tasks like, I want this flower which only grows up on the highest slope of the highest mountain. Go and bring me a bouquet. So you can do make the tasks interesting. Emily.
Yes, could it be if the thugs are only picking on the players? Could it be that it was all planned? Like, for some reason, they've got it in the backstory that each of the players has upset the Lord at some point in his life, and they've actually planned this fight to get you to be in debt to the local Lord.
Oh, so
it's a conspiracy.
So specifically against those adventurers, it's not just any adventurers, it is a real personal to the characters. So, yeah, and Josh, your thoughts?
Yeah, it depends on how petty the Lord is. I mean, maybe the adventurer bought an apple. Maybe the Lord wanted 20 apples, but now the market owner has only got 19, and he sees you walking away with an apple. It depends how petty he is. Maybe you killed his son. But because it's great because it could vary anywhere between relatively serious to just complete comedy.
Yeah, because I was just thinking that in the character generation thing, especially it worked really well if you had a lawful good party. And you said, well, I want one thing from your character's past that your character's ashamed of, or where they committed a sin. And then the GM takes those and works them as the petty reasons, they're all somehow connected to this lord of this one person. So yeah, that could be, you could really interestingly start the adventure and actually give some backstory to the characters in this sort of stereotype setting. So yeah, that is good. Okay, right, I think that's it. Oh, well, one more idea. I've got another idea. This was just, again, I was just riffing on how to mess around with the trope, how to mess around with the basic ideas of starting a campaign. And I thought, well, what normally happens? You go into a tavern and, as we said, we have a brawl or something magical happens or whatever else. All these ideas, perfectly good, great ideas. But I thought, what would happen if nothing happened? If everyone sort of like just wandered in the tavern separately for a quiet drink, lunchtime drink, and they're the only people in the tavern. There's the characters, there's the barman, and there's nothing interesting happening. There's no rumours, there's nothing suspicious about the tavern, there's no history, and then they just sit there, and the players are forced to roleplay. I mean, because you'd sort of your eyes would meet, and slowly you would sort of have a conversation, if nothing else, about what a dull pub this is. And then so the players do all of this, and then literally nothing happens. They decide clearly nothing is going to happen, and they all walk out, because they all sort of got to know each other a bit now, and they all know they're a bit adventurous. And as they walk out the door, a man staggers up to the street and falls dead at their feet with a knife sticking out the back. And that is actually the hook to the adventure. So I was just wanted that play on the idea of actually what happens if nothing happens. Josh?
Depends how sadistic the DM is. It's like, could the DM build up, there's going to be a fight, and someone's going to get murdered in the pub? Or, again, say, there's something in the drink. Well, no, he's just got no tolerance to the drink. It depends how tight can you wind that tension before you reveal nothing happens.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a whole load of fake clues. You could actually do completely over the top, an embarrassment of clues. Suspiciously named, the demon armed, serving werewolf beer, and and sort of like strange carvings and things like. And actually, all this pans out to be really, really dull, and nothing to do with it.
So it's just a way to really irritate the players. If something's going to happen, nothing happens, and they're like, let's just go outside. Oh, man gets stabbed in the back.
Emily,
come on.
You've got some thoughts.
I think it's a really nice way to build character up. If you give them that awkward thing where they have to actually speak to each other and acknowledge each other. I also thought as well, pub games. They're really important if they're kind of new to role playing. A good way of testing them, working out how the dice works and how the flow works, is to get them to play a few pub games like horseshoes.
Yeah,
and just a way of getting used to rolling.
Yes, it's like you have this tavern with nothing else in it, and just a couple of pub games set up, dominoes or pub skittles or whatever else. So the players have, inevitably out of curiosity, going to go, well, the plot hook's got to be here somewhere. I'll go and play the pub game.
Start.
Yes.
Oh, and Neil's got an idea.
Yeah, it was the one thing with it is a careful one when you go. You don't necessarily have anything happen. Because it's like the drama theory of if you lay things down, it either has to play off. So, for instance, like if there's a gun in a scene, that gun has to be fired.
Yeah, check off.
So
Yeah.
Something like werewolf beer makes sense because that's a joke. That's something you're always that's from there. That can work. But if you might want to put guidelines in going. You may not want to try and egg certain things because it could risk that it could really not necessarily it could potentially confuse players thinking that's something that's going to come back later. So it's a careful thing of how you structure that. But otherwise, I think making the players role play in a way and then chucking them a situation, but potentially depending how they role play, the GM potentially tailors something from stuff they say. He could potentially, because if this is their first game, it's a case of they have to literally improvise concepts of what their characters are. Potentially they'll say, oh, we know each other from such and such, and they mention something. If the GM in this period is basically just taking notes on what they're saying, they can basically tailor a campaign to their issues, to something that, as a story arc, is something that they potentially overcome. If it emerges that someone has potentially phobia or anger towards something, it could be written in a way that basically they're going to have to deal with that in some way. And they may overcome it, they may not. And it gives potential for GM more ability to work out what would suit this party well, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about, you've got to be careful about the clues. There's got to be the fake clues and the real clues, and there's got to be some logic or some signal to the players about the difference between the two, so they know, because otherwise the players will get very confused or frustrated or whatever else. But yeah, I think you can have fun with that sort of language. But I think, as Josh has noted, it's a great way of starting a personal campaign. If you actually had this pub full of potential clues and got the players to interact with them, then the GM just picks one of those clues and makes it real, and all those other clues, everything else is actually dead ends or just set dressing or whatever, then actually you can sort of like tailor it very much for the characters concerned. Emily, Cluedo?
I don't know. It's just the thought of having all the different clues in the room.
Oh yes. Yeah, actually, yeah. I think that's just a strange idea. You could have a theme tavern, and the players slowly realise that actually they laid out like the Cluedo board. Right, I think that's it for ideas. I think those are some really good ones, and I like those. And particularly, there's a couple there which I'm going to store away to keep for future campaigns. So that's it for our just brainstorming. So let's head towards the end. We'll do some pluses and deltas with Josh.
With me, indeed. So I'll start out on the list I've got here. Emily, pluses and deltas.
Pluses, although it's only a few of us, we actually got quite a lot of ideas shared, which was quite nice, and had a good kind of chuckle about it. And it was quite nice having the little goblin Neil just sat behind me, giving his kind of opinions as well.
I'm available for bar mitzvahs and birthdays as well.
Deltas, yeah, just shame there wasn't any more people. Right.
Okay, Chris, how do you feel?
No, I feel like it wasn't unmuted. Okay, yes, pluses. Yeah, I actually enjoyed this. You know, after some recent weeks where we've had quite a big crowd, I was a bit sort of, wasn't sure how well it was going to work with just the three of us, or 3.5 of us if we count Neil.
Oh,
but I think actually it sort of worked really well. I think it gave us more time and more opportunity to bounce off each other than maybe we do when there's like 6 or 7 of us. So that's very good. Delta, the concept for meeting is something I came up with, and I'm not sure quite. Sort of, I couldn't think of a snappy way of putting it across. I couldn't think of a snappy title. And what did I actually come up with? Fantasy taverns with party-forming plot hooks. It's a bit of a mouthful, and I could have done with a snappier title, I think.
Sounds to me like we should get some booze down. You might think of something then.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark, but he's not here, so I don't know why it's on it. Neil, in fact, I'll go for Neil. Neil, are you not sure? I'm not aware how this works. But a plus and a delta, please.
Yes. I think, obviously, I've not really experienced a big group or anything like that, but I'd say because it's a small one, it means that people are able to probably maybe delve a bit deeper into ideas and debate them a bit more, because you've got more time, you're not having to split it up as much. And as a result, it also means that it potentially bounces ideas back a bit quicker. as well, because there's not as many people to potentially go, oh, what about this, what about this? It's a case of, oh, just add that on, and then bounces back because you begin a rapport quite quickly, such. So that might work for certain things if you want to do something quick in some ways and stuff, and then develop from there. And then Delta.
We couldn't see you. You were just a disembodied voice.
That's what I am anyway. I only materialise every now and again.
This is true.
Yes. Yeah, I can't really think of any negative stuff. Nothing really to compare it to. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Plus and dollars for myself. Nice group size. If we get to bounce around ideas, a few, possibly a bit more. Interesting concept. I like discussing tropes, and I always love subverting them quite a lot. So this has been fun. I love any way to subvert standard fantasy fare. Deltas, it's so frigging cold. I've got the heating on, and it's still cold in here. But no real Deltas about meeting. It's been a very good meeting. Oh, and lack of light and burning my face off with the lamp right here. But whatever. But yeah, all good. So I'll pass back on to Chris for the sign-off.
Okay, thank you very much, Josh. So that's been our meeting this week. We will be back next week for our final meeting before Christmas, and we haven't absolutely decided the topic, but I think it's going to be Christmas themed. And I'm thinking something along the lines of adventure ideas set at Christmas. So it can be any setting, any genre, whatever you like, but a Christmas themed adventure. So something to do, and this might be to do because I've written one. We have a 66 adventure called Mince Pies and Murder, all about this. So let's think of some new Christmas themed adventures for next week. So I would like to say thank you very much to Josh, to Emily, and to Neil for being here, and to Pat and Jay for sending in their ideas. And until next week, subscribe, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.